Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. Assalamu alaikum from the UK and from France today. Welcome everybody to MACFEST 2024. Tell us in the chat where you're watching us from. Also, if you have any questions or you'd like to share any thoughts on today's presentations, also please put them in the chat. We do want to have a conversation with our audience. So today's we've got an environment event, and before we start and before I introduce our host for today, I'd like to, as always, thank you so much for your generous donations. We do rely on them, so please send more because we're creating the program for MACFEST 2025, and we still have good few events to go before we finish the festival this year. So please take a look on Eventbrite. We've got live events and online events. And stay connected with us through the newsletter and on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok. And please use our hashtag #SpreadHoney, We also have this year, for the first time, MACFEST Arts Awards for our Muslim artists and creatives. The submissions are free, and we start with an online submission through MACFEST website. So please take a look. If you're an artist or you know somebody who's got some works that you'd like to show, feel free to join the process, and the deadline is 30th of June. We won't be able to accept any late submissions. So today's host is Safiya Florence Ascoli-Ball, who converted to Islam 27 years ago, and she holds a master's in international marketing and foreign language, which she achieved in her home country, France. She lives in Manchester with her husband and children and works on various projects relating to her two main interests: improving Muslim women's physical well-being as an instructor of Pilates and Taekwondo. Wow, Taekwondo! And spreading good quality knowledge about Islamic civilizations through, and I hope I pronounced it correctly, Bayt Al-Hikma Productions. It's a project she set up with her husband in partnership with Dr Salah Eddine Al-Djazairi, and you will meet Dr Salah today on our event. So over to you, Safiya.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings upon you all. Good afternoon. Thank you, Katarzyna and Kesra and the whole team. It's always a pleasure to come back year after year, contribute to this wonderful event, showcasing Muslim culture and civilization, a passion of mine and of Dr. Salah's and of Luzita as well, our second panelist. So today we're going to talk about the environment and how Islam's view, caring for the environment, but also how we can find solutions for all this. So probably most of you, I can see from the charts where you're from. Some of you are coming from, obviously, from the UK, but we have someone from the USA. We've got someone from Indonesia. So you will be familiar with the difficulties that we're facing right now in terms of the environment. But many parts of the Muslim world are at risk of terminal destruction, and these are Dr. Salah's words. He doesn't mean his words, definitely. Deforestation, destruction of farming lands, loss of soil, destruction of water resources, pollution of rivers, air pollution, devastation of coastal parts, destruction of fish stocks, and countless other facts all preclude or signal future catastrophe. The most immediate and terrifying threat is related to the loss of water resources. Regions which used to be breadbaskets are today dry, sterile lands, and conditions can only grow worse. So what is Islam's view of nature? Does it provide a code of conduct governing an individual's behavior towards other sentient beings and the rest of the natural world? This is our question today. The UN's World Environment Day is coming up this Wednesday. World Environment Day has been held annually on the 5th of June since its inception in 1973. It celebrates environmental action and the power of governments, businesses, and individuals to create a more sustainable world. This year, interestingly, the event is being hosted by Saudi Arabia, with a focus on land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience, which ties in nicely with our talk today. Excuse me. So today in our panel, we have two experts in this field. First up will be Luzita Ball. Luzita has been working in community education at all levels since 1993. Her focus has been to encourage community building and empowerment initiatives. She has worked to spread awareness about Islam, environmental management, regenerative agriculture, human rights and responsibilities, and natural health through educational activities in many settings, from grassroots community groups to university projects in the UK, Africa, and the Middle East. She holds a BSc degree in agroforestry, holistic land and ecosystem management, an MA in urban regeneration, improving cities for people and the environment, and a certificate in permaculture design and teaching. She is also a trustee of IFEES EcoIslam, a charity which has been working for 3 decades to spread awareness locally and globally about Islamic guidance on ecology and the environment, and is helping to write and produce the IFEES EcoIslam newsletter. MashaAllah, welcome Luzita. She's also a founding member of the pioneering Pillars of Peace Women's Group, which has been set up in 2010 in her hometown, Northampton. Our second panelist today is Dr. Salah Eddine Al-Djazairi. Some of you may remember him from last year, who did a very insightful and interesting talk about China for MACFEST. Dr. Salah lectured and researched at the University of Constantine in Algeria for more than 10 years. He also tutored at the Department of Geography at the University of Manchester and worked as a research assistant at UMIST in Manchester in the field of history of science. He has published many academic works. Publications in scientific journals include papers on environmental degradation and desertification, as well as papers on politics and change in North Africa and problems of economic and social development. He has also contributed historical entries to various encyclopedias, such as the Columbia Gazetteer, Encyclopedia Britannica, Francophone Studies, and the Oxford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, Science and Technology in Islam. The largest written contribution by the author has been about Muslim science and civilization. Titles include The Hidden Debt to Islamic Civilization, The History of Islam, The Golden Age and Decline of Islamic Civilization, and one truly relevant to our topic today, The Destruction of the Environment in/of the Muslim World. A totally unique work, providing facts from hundreds of sources by Muslims and non-Muslims, researchers and government bodies, to make this knowledge more available for the wider non-academic public. So we are working to disseminate this essential work further around the world through distributors and translations. So please contact us. Our organization is Bayt Al-Hikma, very nice, Katarzyna, Bayt Al-Hikma Productions. And our email is very simply baytalhikma.history@gmail.com. We will put that in the chat as well in a minute. It's baytalhikma.history@gmail.com. Please do contact us. We would love to hear from you how you can help us disseminate this knowledge. So now let's listen to Dr. Salah and let's see what you have to say. Hopefully a bit of positive, Dr. Salah. Just have to unmute yourself, Dr. Salah, first.
I don't know why I keep muting myself.
That's fine. Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. Uh, Today, obviously, as said by everybody, the talk is about the environment in the Muslim world. Personally, I won't talk too much about what is talked about quite a lot, and you'll find a great deal on the internet, Islam and the environment. You will be surprised by the vast literature Islam, the Quran, and the Hadith in relation to preserving the environment. As I said, if not hundreds of authors, the connection between Islam and the protection and the care for the environment is extremely important. And very, very, very few people know about it, especially, I think, non-Muslims. And Muslims don't know, or maybe they do, or some of them do, that Islam is by far the greenest thought or religion that exists in the world, because it's not just in the Quran, and it's in the Hadith, and there are lines and quotes that are unique to Islam. And from the early times, from the beginning, Islam has stressed the need for the preservation of nature. We could talk about the preservation. You find many passages, the most famous being on water. Water, forest cover, vegetation, the soil, and so on. So normally you would expect Muslim nation, devout nation, to be the most environmentally friendly nation on earth. And many people who are non-Muslim were seduced by the green aspect, especially, again, not only in the Quran and in the Hadith, but also early Islamic society. People used to be stunned by Muslim environmental care. They used to leave, I'm talking about travelers, students, and so on, the West or Western paths, and they used to travel to the Muslim world, and they find these beautiful places, clean, first and foremost. Our cities, our urban areas, our towns used to be the cleanest, the greenest, with farms, forests, fruit trees, orchards. It was such, they used to see, they discovered many delights of the nature, including fruit, including some farming produce in the Islamic world, things they had never seen before. And they used to be stunned by that, what they saw in the Muslim world. And this was one of the reasons they touched many of them, even if in those days the world was even more violent than today. And many were seduced by this wonderful, peaceful, quiet, orderly, green aspect of Muslim society, which unfortunately they don't find today. We will get back to this once we try. Now, you look, we set aside the religion, as I said, in the religious text of the Hadith, and which you will find easily a great deal about. We look at the location of the Muslim world. We have a map. I hope Safiya or somebody would put that map for you in on the screen. Can we have the map, Safiya? Safiya? Yeah, there it is. If you look at this map here, it shows you North Africa, the Middle East, including Turkey here, Pakistan here, in the Muslim India here, or it's not Muslim India, it's no longer Muslim, but India here. As far as you see, this is Central Asian Muslim countries going. What we see gray here is desert already. That's now is here you have the Sahara, it's desert. I come from there. There are just few oases. This is Libya, it's mostly desert. Southern Tunisia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia. And then you have here Central Asian countries again. The dark red are the areas that are turning desert very fast, as you see, very high, middle. So if we look at the map, The map on its own shows you that the Muslim world is in the most fragile part of the world. You see here green a bit. I mean, we set aside Malaysia and Indonesia further to the east, which are green, but as you see, bits of desertification already taking place around here and in other places. So the point is, the Muslim world has two fundamental reasons for caring about the environment. One is the Quran and the Hadith. It's the religious text, as is it's everywhere. But no need for me to repeat what's in there. And the second, the reality of the Muslim world. And I tell you, this reality is not just a map because I come from Algeria. We lived through it, and we live through it now. For instance, to get water in parts of Algeria is not like in the UK, you turn the tap and the water comes flowing. You get it a maximum an hour a day. Sometimes it disappears for days, sometimes it disappears for a week, and especially in the hot season. That's one thing. If you look at agriculture, the problems sometimes in the Muslim world are extremely difficult to get some water to irrigate and to find clean water to wash is already a problem. Forget about agriculture. Industries sometimes stop because there is no water or shortage or because of a heat wave. Forget about other manifestations such as forest fires, which every summer destroy what's left of the Muslim forest. You see here, for instance, the green bits away from the Muslim world. And if you go into Europe, it's quite green. But in our parts, the forests are just a decreasing, minute surface area. Normally, Muslims should be greening their land day and night. Unfortunately, this is not the case. I know the Saudis are making an effort now. Together, they are having projects with China to try to green their barren area. I hope they succeed, because this is no easy work, but you have to do it. The Muslim world has to take care of what's green already, of its forests already that exist, and to try to add to them. This is a vital necessity because forests play a major part. But the first thing to do is to stop destroying what's already there and to stop burning the forests that exist. Unfortunately, we are in June. Wait a few more weeks and you will begin getting flooded with sites of forests burning in Algeria, Turkey, wherever it is. It is a catastrophe, certainly. Forget about the people dying from this forest fires and so on. I will return to the problems of the environment in the second and final part of this talk. What I will say is that although the Quran, the Hadith, and the reality impose on Muslims to be careful about the environment, the fact is they are not. Now, who is at fault? That I am not going to be judged here. The fact is, as Safiya mentioned, the Saudis are organizing a big gathering from the 5th of June or conference or whatever it is. It's not the first, it's not going to be the last, and they have been organizing them for decades. Governments have been trying to do introducing measures, this, that, for water, for forests, against pollutions, measures, article this, law that. The Muslim world is awash with conferences, gatherings, state, huge amounts, billions, tens of billions have been spent, not just on the protection of the environment, but also in education and in other areas. Unfortunately, the results have been very bad or terrible in places. Again, I try to avoid going into this and being too critical. So it doesn't mean that whether the policies are right, maybe they are too kind, maybe they are too, how do you call it, moderate, maybe they are not radical enough, maybe because Muslim governments don't punish, or I don't know. I have no idea. And I can't give you an idea about this. All I know is that effort or policies have been tried, not just in relation to saving the environment, but also in promoting research at university, in having whatever. But unfortunately, the reality keeps coming back, and the results are quite modest, if not negative. Now, the problems of the environment, to stay with those, they have been talked about by some Muslim clever, really very, very clever professors and scholars. I think nearly all of them now are dead, Allah yarhamam, but really, especially from Egypt, some people such as Tolba, Professor Tolba, Professor Qassas, and others in Tunisia, in Algeria, Professor Sari, Allah yarham most of them. And one, I think, who is still alive, Najib Saad, who is in Lebanon, and they have written some remarkable works, and other younger generations, maybe about 10, 20 young Muslim passionate lovers of the environment, who talk about the problems that affect the Muslim world, and they keep coming with solutions. The only thing that disappoints somebody like me is that I find that the problems they have been talking about in the 60s, in the 70s, are with us now in 2024. And they are just getting worse. And I will tell you about some of these problems. So you pick. It's not that the Muslims are not aware. I mean, some of them. It's not that the governments are not aware. It's not that some top scientists. And these are really passionate, immensely clever people. I wish I was half as good as them. I mean, I have written a book on the environment myself, but my own book is a summary. It's simple. It's putting together what all these professors and more people, specialists, have said for decades. I have put things together, more or less. My book is an outline of the situation in the Muslim world, written in simple ways. So there is nothing extraordinary in my book that hasn't been said or told or explained by these great minds. And the Saudis, next week, listening to Sister Safiya, what she said on the 5th of June onwards, they are going to talk again about these problems that have been raised 30, 40, 50 years ago, and they are there back. They have been talking about forest fires and protecting this. And this, what personally disappoints me about the Muslim world of today. It is, you find, whether you're looking at research in universities or innovations, R&D, or environmental protection, or social problems, you find the problems have been talked about, and measures, whatever they could be, just symbolic, talked about and dealt with 30, 40, 50 years ago. I remember I was in Algeria 35 years ago, and the same problems I find now in 2024. They have just grown worse. I mean, you cannot have one problem there lasting and you have the ideas and it's there. If a solution had to be found in 30, 40 years, if you can't find and the problem is getting worse, there must be something fundamentally wrong. I don't know. I can't tell because I don't live in Algeria or in any. I live in Turkey and I'm cut off completely from the policies or the world outside. And I'm not, to be fair, I just stick to my own research and I don't get involved. But you find the same problems I will refer to in a moment as the big minds spoke about 30, 40, 50 years ago. And I will list this problem. As I said, these eminent personalities, most of them, if not all of them, are dead, Allah yarham, like M.K. Tolba. They have been talking about these things in the Arab world in particular, but it's not the Arab world only. Say that the Arab world is here, Middle East, North Africa, and the Middle. It's also Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia. talking about Indonesia, you know that the most polluted river in the world is in Indonesia. The Citron is the dirtiest river in the world. And this is what one drives on. Is Indonesian society not Muslim? No, it is Muslim, 90 whatever percent. Don't they? They say Islam, cleanliness is half the faith. We all know it. Yet, we have the dirtiest river in the world. If you saw pictures of it, you would not believe it, how filthy it is. And it's not just Indonesia, it's throughout the Muslim world, it's the same thing. So you're struck by this thing. Forget about trash. The Muslim world is the rubbish dump all over, wherever you go. Anywhere you find the forest, the land, the roads, the motorways, the picnic areas, forget about them. Muslims simply trash. They trash their river, they trash. It's as if this map means nothing to them. It's as if Islam has no impact. You find this thing in Islam. So if you tell a Western visitor, Islam is, in Islam, cleanliness is half the faith, the Westerner won't believe you. The non-Muslim won't believe you. Say, look how trashy. And I come from Algeria, and we had French visitors to Algeria, and the first thing that struck them was trash. Trash, 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 the roads, even just trash stops at the door of the mosque. I was talking to my brother a while ago, and he who lives in Algeria, he said to me, it's piles of trash to the door of the mosque. It's incredible. And you see Muslims, it's not that I don't see them, they have a packet into that they throw it away. They have a cigarette, they throw it away. It's no care whatsoever. It's not that there are no bins. We have more bins in the streets. I have lived in England. I can tell you there are 600% time more bins where I live now than in England. But the society is, as I said, people who live in the Muslim world country. Now, as I said, this being a reality, but I won't linger too much on it. I just would like to list a couple of really problems, priorities. Again, as I said at the start, there will be seminars, there will be conferences, there will be gatherings, there are laws. Whether they will change reality, personally, I'm no longer optimistic, because, as I said, the problems that were there in the 70s, I'm finding now in 2024. Perhaps I'm too pessimistic. I hope I'm wrong. But let me look at some of the environmental, just briefly sum up some. The major threat to the Muslim world, environmentally speaking, is not global warming, we'll get back to it if it happens, is water. In the Muslim world, as you see from the map, is already one of the driest areas in the world, and it is getting drier. The risk, Allah knows, because only Allah knows what will happen in the future. But people have to do their bit, and they are not doing their bit. But Allah knows, if things go on like this, many parts of the Muslim world will turn into complete desert without any water, and populations would have to leave many areas of the Muslim world, whether in the Sudan, Syria, Iraq, because rivers would be completely dry, wells are dry, dams, plus if there is lower rainfall. Last year we had fights here in Turkey around the water distribution in an area for farming. There are, fighting between farmers, not, alhamdulillah, not armed, but people keep having the conflicts over wells, this, that, it's my water, no, it's yours, and this, whatever. Anyway, it's a big, there are even threats of war between some Central Asian countries that are fighting over rivers and dams and so on. And because some countries say the water belongs to us, others say no, it belongs to us. And again, it's some countries or some communities overuse, some waste. It's a huge, water is a real danger unless Muslims find a drastic solution. I personally believe in radical solutions only. I don't believe in the laws and the policies that are being implemented now, because in my views, they are too moderate and too kind. For instance, take pollution. If you pollute water in the Muslim world, you get away with it. Normally, it should be a capital crime because you're really destroying a vital resource for society. Yet you get away with a little fine. You get away with maybe punishment. Whatever, maybe 20 days in prison if you go to prison, and that's it. But this is the thing: we need radical solutions, imaginative solutions, very, very. I don't know how to say it, that are adapted to the risk, because there is a fundamental risk that we will have barely no water unless Allah decrees a new ice age, because we don't know what Allah's designs are. Maybe things would change, and it's neither I nor any one of us knows what might happen in the field of water. And what affects water affects forests. The last green bits, which you don't see barely little here in Morocco or in Algeria, some tiny thing, green areas. In Turkey, there are bits of forests, and Malaysia, Indonesia. We have to preserve our forest cover. We have to preserve it and increase the size, because forests play a major part in the ecosystem, in at least keeping the land livable, in saving, because all forests, I'm not going to explain all the technicalities here. There are lots of works that do it, but forests preserve soil, water resources, they keep life bearable. Cutting a tree in the Muslim world should be a crime of the first order. At the moment, it is not. As I was talking to some friends, I think yesterday or whenever, I think I was talking to Safiya and others yesterday. You cut a tree in the UK, and the punishment is hundreds of times more severe than if you cut a forest or a land green forest in the Muslim world. We have these things. Allah hasn't created a forest for nothing. He doesn't tell us. And in the hadith as well, and the example of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is here. The importance of a tree for humans, for birds, it's not, how do we say, given for nothing. It is stressed for certain reason, important, especially in the Muslim, at least for the shade of the tree. You go through many urban areas in the Muslim world and you don't have the sight of a tree at all. Or it is, sometimes you're walking in the desert, in the city, pavement. And this is sometimes quite impossible to live in some urban areas, in some towns. We take other things. I was talking about pollution. I cannot understand, again, the sight of seeing a Muslim throwing a cigarette end or his rubbish into waterway or onto the ground or into, to me, especially if there are bins, it is a criminal act. Yet you see it everywhere. You even see some Muslims doing it in the UK, and I have seen a couple and being stopped by the police. One was having an argument once. I was in Manchester with the police explaining that he didn't throw it. He was saying, no, I didn't. And they say, we saw you and so on. Although it is a mechanism. Muslims have to learn not to be cleaner. We want to use the word not to be dirty, not to throw, for instance, their cigarettes from their balcony. You're walking in the street and the cigarette falls on your head. It is a common fact. We have to admit these things, because if we don't admit these truths, these realities about ourselves, they will never be corrected. Of course, I'm a bit extreme, perhaps, but we have, unless you see, there is criticism. There is excessive criticism that is we can call is Islamophobia, when people see somebody being good Muslim and they criticize him. No, we cannot get to the of criticizing. Islam is very beautiful. Islam is wonderful. It's we Muslims. It's not because we are Muslims we are all good. No, no. Many of us, I can tell you the percentage, are not. I maybe myself do not behave in the most basic ways. Of course, we can't be ideal Muslims, good all the time, perfect, really devout all the time. Yeah, this is, we all have flaws, but we can do a minimum. And so you see, there is, and the minimum is to have a little discipline, order, cleanliness, and respect for what surrounds us. The basic thing is to respect the neighbors, to respect our land, to respect our rivers, to respect our countries, not to trash them. You see, this is the point. You cannot be somebody raising the flag of his country and they shouting, long live my country, Petra, and then he trashes it. This is what you see. I have seen people throwing the rubbish at the bottom of the flag of their countries, these areas where they commemorate the memories of their country, and they trash them. And their flag is proudly floating. It is fundamental. You see, as I said, we cannot be wonderful Muslims, but we can at least do the little things like Westerners do. Be less messy, less chaotic, less whatever, trashy, and so on. Now, pollution. There is no need to make water, whether it's the sea or a river, dirty. Why do you throw your rubbish, your beer bottle or your plastic out of your into the water? Just go somewhere and put it in the bin. That's number one. I mean, there is something else I would like to mention. Take noise. Noise pollution in the Muslim world is the highest in the world. I mean, Islam doesn't encourage noise. Islam is against noise. Islam is for the respect of your neighbor. Try to live now in a Muslim town and city. I live in a Muslim. It's hell, especially in the summer. It's hell. Nobody cares about anybody else. You cannot, under law, I don't know where it is, whether it's, forget about weddings and this and that, and it's all night, especially in the summer. You have to keep your, and it begins from your neighbor to everyone. Nobody seems to know. Islam doesn't tell you to yell like an animal day and night. It's the opposite. You have to respect your neighbor. Could be unwell. Your neighbor could have cancer or heart problems. Shut up. Don't yell. Put your children to sleep at midnight. Don't let them roam the streets. You see, it's basic things. Now, you take any other fish stocks. Why do we have to destroy our fish? Why do we have to overfish? And we have catch somebody who is overfished and lock him in prison or lock his business. It is polluting the seashores where we fish, where we eat from. It's so many things. I mean, we can have all the gatherings. We can have all the laws. We can have whatever. Talking about something else, I saw pictures from Bangladesh and of pollution, of sewage. It's indignified of a Muslim country to have so much sewage in the streets of its cities. It's pouring like this, and people jumping, leaping over there. It's not that it is, in some places, it is utter chaos, utter mess. We have to accept that this is the reality. If we don't say these things, if we say, brother, we are, no, we have within limits, because our behavior is in these simple things completely in contradiction with Islam.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much, Dr. Salah. This is very true. I think we need more voices like you. You know, you, as I said in my introduction, you do not mince your word, but you say the truth. You say the truth, and these are stories we've heard for so long now, and it's a shame that it's not changing. Now, in the chat while you were doing your presentation, we had some very interesting comments, and what comes out is that there are more and more grassroots groups and efforts, projects to try and change this, and it seems that there is hope from the youth. Hopefully we have someone from Indonesia saying that actually there are now youth groups who are coming out and cleaning areas, cleaning rivers and waterways. So the youth now, we've reached a point of it's quite dramatic. So hopefully, yeah, inshallah, we can hope that sadly a couple of generations have done a lot of damage, and now you know, the youth are hopefully going to get their act together and repair some of that damage. Unfortunately, we have to stop here, Dr. Salah. We want to listen to Luzita, see what her sort of side of the story is, and the project that have been put in place, and then we'll get back to you, inshallah, with questions. So don't go anywhere.
I listen. I might disappear briefly for 2 minutes.
That's fine. Just mute yourself,
I am thirsty.
please. That's it. You can just mute yourself, but Tom will do that for us, and then we can listen to Luzita. Don't forget to unmute yourself, Luzita. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. We can hear you. We just have to mute Dr. Salah and then move on to Luzita as a speaker. That's it. Go ahead, Luzita.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be with you. Thank you very much to everybody for inviting me. It's an honor to be on your MACFEST and to be part of it. And I say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most merciful, most kind, and peace and blessings upon all the prophets. So we've heard a lot about the problems that Dr. Salah has been seeing firsthand in the Muslim world. I have also traveled in the Muslim world in Qatar and in Tunisia and now Oman as well, mostly. And I have seen some of the problems he's talking about. And yet my talk is trying to be focused more on what we can do about it. So that's, and what things Islam has to encourage us. But first of all, I think people tend to think about the environment as either it's a middle class kind of luxury thing to be concerned about. You know, so many other problems, so many problems of injustice, wars, and terrible things going on. And they don't think that the environment kind of comes down a bit lower in their set of priorities. The problem is that a lot of the wars in the future will be over things like water and you know, land, having good land and resources to use just to live. So people don't realize it is extremely relevant to their everyday life. It's not a minor issue. It's now been realized that it is a major issue by the youth. I'm not sure about everybody else. The Extinction Rebellion is largely a youth movement, although there are many older people in it as well. So, you know, there are many problems people may have heard of. The main one that everyone knows about is climate change, the climate crisis. Obviously, we've just heard about all the pollution, noise pollution, air pollution, soil pollution, water pollution, plastic waste, huge islands of plastic in the oceans, radioactive waste from accidents and from leaks. The ozone hole, people have forgotten about probably, but that's causing some people to get skin cancer, acid rain, killing trees, affecting watercourses. We don't hear much about that these days anyway. And then lack of clean water and other chemicals in our environments hurting our health, like giving people asthma and so on. So really, what do these all got in common, and what is the real underlying problem with them all, and why are they so important? Is because they threaten life on the planet Earth. They are threatening us, our health, and they are threatening the health of ecosystems globally. So this is a thing that has been termed the climate emergency, or the Extinction Rebellion emergency. And this is why Greta Thunberg is so angry with the people who have helped to create this big mess, and saying, how dare you? You know, didn't you think about us, the next generations? You know, we are going to have to live with the consequences of all the things that have been done by the past generations. Now I would like to just talk about, this is what I am getting onto here, the decline in populations of different species, the decline in biodiversity. And this is reaching such levels that people are worried, scientists are worried, that many ecosystems that we depend upon as human beings, I will talk more about that in a moment, how we depend upon them, but many of them are at threat of collapsing over, in the nearby future. So a staggering fifth of countries globally are at risk of their ecosystems collapsing due to the decline in biodiversity and related beneficial services of those ecosystems, says Swiss Re, one of the world's biggest reinsurers and a linchpin of the global insurance industry. So even the finance sector is got very concerned about ecosystems and how they are under threat from the disappearance of many species. So which ecosystem services are they providing that we are going to suffer from if we don't have them? So many of the services include giving us water purification, giving us good soil, giving us soil fertility, giving us the ability to hold on to the fertile soil. This includes trees, holding on to the water. This includes trees and other perennials in forests. They also help to purify the soil. In Chernobyl, it's amazing that the soil has been helped to be purified from radioactivity by the plants and trees that are in that area, which is quite amazing, making it more livable for the people who are around that area. And we thought that would be devastated forever because of the Chernobyl accident. So also pollination.
Zita, sorry,
just
instantly you're talking about Chernobyl, and I just found out recently that even a fungus has developed in Chernobyl, absorbing the radioactive waste and using it as energy. So
SubhanAllah, it's amazing.
That reminds me of, Allah saying in the Quran that for every ill there is a cure in nature, in nature, in the creation. This obviously, this is just a little aside because you mentioned it, but obviously
thank you very much for that, because that's
feel too complacent and say, oh, that's okay, the nature. But there is also a process which can give us hope in that.
That's right.
Situation.
This is why I am a campaigner for regenerating ecosystems and regenerative agriculture. That seems to be the most useful thing that we can put our efforts into if we want to be more resilient in the face of climate change, and also help to mitigate climate change, because and now people have realized this, that it's our ecosystems we need to put energy into, to join them up and to conserve them, regenerate them, so they will help to minimize the temperature increase in the world and the degree of climate change if we do this on a big enough scale. So as you can see from the diagrams, this is showing the Living Planet Index, looking at all the different kinds of species and how much they have declined just since 1970. I mean, this is just a small portion of the decline. There's been a large decline in species since the 1500s, since industrialization started, which is, very slowly at first, that was just agriculture. And then in the 1800s, industrialization started. So all those factors of human beings spreading out and population increasing, them using resources, it's caused over time a lot of decline in species, but I think it's been particularly bad in this period of time between 1970 and now. If you imagine, that's 2000 on the diagram, it's actually now 2024. So we're now at a very bad low point in the decline of species. So the economic impact is going to be, starting to hit us probably before the ecosystems collapse, said Alexandra Saf, a professor of public policy in economics and environment at Duke University in the US. And just an example is water scarcity. According to Swiss Re, the reinsurers, they said that water scarcity could damage manufacturing sectors, properties, and supply chains. Both developing and developed countries, so-called developed, they are all at risk. Not just in the countries which are hot and desert-like. Sorry, I had a cold. Drink some water. About 1 in 7 countries has intact ecosystems covering more than 30% of their country area. And the countries which have more than 30% of their area with fragile ecosystems, they are deemed to be at risk of those ecosystems collapsing. And global wildlife populations have plummeted by 69% on average since 1970. So this tells you, the extent of the problem. I could go on and on. Okay. Some of the critically endangered species are species of elephants, rhinos, tigers, whales, turtles, gorillas, orangutans, leopards, dolphins. They're not minor species, these are major species. And of course, many others that you've probably never heard of plants and fungi and others. So more than 44,000 species are threatened with extinction, and more than 157,100 species are on the IUCN, that's the International Union for Conservation of Nature, red list. Okay, what are the causes of biodiversity decline? So here, just before I get onto that.
Do you want to take another drink?
This is
take your time. And
showing us.
You can read some of the comments while she takes a break.
Thank you. Obviously we have to do something about this. So the goal is to regenerate nature. We need to regenerate it by 2050. We are trying to do that. All over the world, there are people who are trying to aim for this. But it's a big job. So what are the causes of biodiversity decline? One of the major ones is habitat damage and loss. And this happens largely through human activity, constructing roads, houses, industry, and mining. Obviously, climate change affects these habitats, making them, change too quickly for species to move from those places or to adapt fast enough. So the extreme weather patterns becoming more frequent, the higher temperatures, glaciers and polar ice melting, and not freezing again in winter enough, increasing the water temperatures, and sea levels rising due to the ice melting. All these things are affecting species and making it hard for them to adapt quick enough. Pollution of soil and air and water, as we mentioned before, and these pollutants can include natural, not just factory chemicals, but also nitrates from farms, sewage, which is still going into rivers worldwide, especially during floods and so on. Oil spills, I've mentioned some of those, plastic and all the other things. And overexploitation is another reason why there's biodiversity decline, including fishing and hunting and logging to excess. Fishing drag nets should be banned everywhere, but they are still being used in some places, which they're like huge curtains going through the water, picking up practically everything, and lots of it's just thrown away and they're dead. They've died by being stuck in the net for a long time. So we are wasting a lot. And
I think I'm going to give you a break, Luzita, so you can.
Thank you. I'll just have a little drink of water. You can look at the comments. Have a look at the comments.
Yeah, rest your voice a little bit. And then you can move on maybe on some of the positive and the
I will. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going on the positive again. Okay.
So there was some interesting comments, and you were able to, probably some of you able to read them. But there is a hadith here which I can read. Thank you very much to whoever posted this. That the Prophet ﷺ said, "By the one in whose hands is the soul of Muhammad, indeed the example of the believer is as that of a bee. It eats, consumes whatever is wholesome, and it produces what is wholesome, and it delights neither spoiling, destroying anything, nor doing any wrong."
Oh,
so this is one of the hadith. And we have, as Dr. Salah mentioned, many examples of the Quran and how we are Khilafatul Ard, the successors. Is it best to rest your voice?
No, I'm going to talk now. I'm going to talk now, otherwise you'll be covering things that I was going to cover.
So basically, this is what has been mentioned here in the comments. And as I said earlier, a lot of it revolves around how the youth is waking up, and some grassroots organizations. IFEES, EcoIslam is one such NGO that is very interesting to have a look at. We have another trustee on the chat there, and she's posted the link to that organization called IFEES. Where is it? IFEES.org, is it? Anyway, you can check on the chat, and this is an excellent organization. They even have, which I didn't know, a ready khutbah to be read out in mosque. So if you have contact with a imam or someone who, a mosque chairman, or someone who is managing your local mosque, ask them to have a look at this khutbah and maybe choose one for a future Jumu'ah. But obviously in the UK, as has been said, they're already a bit more ahead. It's a question of, I suppose, tradition, culture, mentality. I do not find the UK particularly clean compared to France. I don't find France particularly clean compared to Switzerland. Some parts of Turkey are very clean, other parts obviously not so much. The parts that are very clean in Turkey are generally very touristy. So there's good and bad, and I'm sure we have it, in us, in every one of us, the ability to do that. So hopefully, Luzita, you've managed to.
I'm fine.
And we can move on to maybe some of the positive, because we've now understood quite well the extent of the problem. We're more familiar with that as well, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I was just going to say the final problem with causing biodiversity is the invasive species. So some of the introduced species that we have put into our lands, which have gone and become plagues, or the plagues of plants or plagues of animals. So at the heart of all this is the excessive human consumption. And we have a map about how sustainable each country is. So now you can see exactly the resources that each country is using up per capita. And although Salah is very disgusted with the Muslim world, I'd like to show you that largely the Muslim world, a lot of it is still not as bad as North America, Russia. So with the exceptions being like Saudi Arabia and some of these Gulf countries who have to depend on fossil fuels for a large part of their economy just to even keep cool. They need it for desalination. They need, they use fossil fuels to make electricity. They use fossil fuels for their cars. They use fossil fuels, because I've lived there and I've seen it. They use fossil fuels to make to desalinate their water. So you can imagine their ecological and carbon footprints are going to be the biggest. But that's partly because they're so hot. They need obviously a lot of electricity for their air conditioning. Whereas in other countries many people are too poor to even have air conditioning. Like in Tunisia, many people don't have much air conditioning. They just have to deal with the hot temperatures, and maybe not quite as hot as Saudi Arabia, but still it's pretty hot, especially in the south, reaching up to 47 degrees in the summer, not too far off what's in Saudi Arabia. So look at the Muslim world, you can see the use of nitrogen, phosphorus, water, land, and all these things is not sustainable in many countries, as you can see in South America, Australia. But this is to show that not all Muslim countries are as wasteful as others. You know, some are still living a bit more closely to nature, and they don't have such a high consumption and wasteful lifestyle. Okay, so you can't really generalize, because there's around 2 billion Muslims in the world. It's a fifth of the world's population. So really, you cannot generalize across the whole of the Muslim world. We are.
Sorry, may
I know we are. Pardon?
Sorry, may I intervene here?
Yes.
Because,
okay.
with all respect, Sister Luzita, you're raising very interesting problems. But one thing, you don't realize two important things which are not on these maps. First of all, the situation in the Muslim world, we are climatically different from America and so on. You have here Alaska. Alaska is not desert, like it's full of water. My problem is that in the Muslim world, we are already in a very, very fragile areas. This map doesn't have. America is full of lakes and rivers and has the resources. It's not the land, the quality of the land in America is not the same as in the Muslim world, the soils are here in Africa. In Africa, I just didn't want to become too technical. The soil is very, very poor. You have to take great care of the soil in the Muslim world, which you don't have to do in America. Erosion rates, I didn't want to go into these technicalities. Many other things are completely different. That's one thing. The second thing, in the Western world or in Russia, they are doing a great deal more than in the Muslim world. It's not, the rates of destruction are not the same. You have to look at the Muslim world specifically with its own problems, which are completely different. And then you focus on the Muslim world and the solution. But because if you look at the situation worldwide on maps like this, they are very misleading. They will encourage passivity, say we are fine. If you look at a map like this, you look at Africans and you say, oh, the Congo is very far. Well, it's a very, very big disaster in the Congo and in African countries. They are starving already. This is the point. This is the point, that the mistake that has been made by many. The problems you were talking about in Norway or in Sweden or climate. No, it's not the same as we have specific problems, and we need their specific solutions.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just a minute. What I'm saying, and this map shows these countries in the north, they are still, despite their ease of life and their much greater, access to good soils and rain and water sources, they still are far more unsustainable because of the way they live and their huge ecological footprint, which depends upon importing many things from all over the rest of the world, and destroying habitats all over the rest of the world and affecting them with oil slicks and so on. So I think partly that these countries that look green, they are more sustainable because they are not importing so much from the rest of the world, and they're not consuming so much. I agree with you that the Muslim world has, a lot of fragility to it in very hot countries, definitely. And the soils, they can build their soils and make them better, but it's very hard when you've got such a lot of challenges. And I think a lot of it is to do with corrupt governments. So,
so we need to go on a little bit.
Carry on. Yeah. So in the Quran it says, Surah 30, ayah 41, corruption has flourished on land and sea as a result of people's actions, and he will make them taste the consequences of some of their own actions so that they may turn back. So we actually only get a taste of the consequences of our actions, and this is so that we can actually, realize, have some humility and realize we're making mistakes. We can't just do whatever we like. We can't follow our desires however we feel. And we have to try and look for some wisdom and turn back to God and find out what God had to say on the matter and how to live in a better way. So, key elements of this turning back to God. First of all, people need to value life. They have to value their own health. They have to value the health of their environment around them, and realize that everything they do to the environment they're going to be consequences for them and for their future generations. Those are very basic values, and people still, many of them don't even have those values because they are still, drinking and, abusing their bodies. So the first environment is your body. If you are abusing your body, how do you expect people to actually think about the environment? Their health will be affected. They will have less ability to even look after the environment. So the next basic thing is to be grateful for the blessings you have, to God and to all those who helped to give you the blessings you have. So if you don't feel grateful, you will not use those resources in the best way. So this is a sickness, which needs to be cured, where people take everything for granted. They don't really respect or value or be grateful for what they have, be thankful for what they have. And another basic principle is to, like I said, you have to turn back in humility. You have to admit that we are limited, we are fallible, we do not know everything, we have limited knowledge, and we get rid of our arrogance. So we then respect that other people might know better than us from the past, and maybe there is some wisdom in these old holy books that people just think, why are they following this book? That's what the current secular attitude is. It's like, why are we following this book? These are old, dusty books. So, Islamic environmental principles. I think one of the most important ones is that we, like I said, we're turning back to God for guidance, not human beings. We are not looking to fallible creatures for our guidance because we know that they do not have full knowledge of the creation. They do not have full wisdom like Allah or God. So what we're taught in Islam is that we should not follow or obey or serve or worship any being that is fallible, that is not God, that is not the real God of the universe, the creator of everything. And that we need to dedicate our lives and all our actions, which are called ibadah, so we should do all of that for the sake of God. And if we do that, that is the first step when we start deciding to do that in our lives. So then we find if we are actually in that state where it is we've decided to put God's will before our will, then we start looking, what did God say? What did Allah tell us in the Quran? Because the two sources of Islam are the Quran and the example of Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, in the Sunnah, the Hadith, and in the Seerah, or the story of the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, and how he applied the Quran and the teachings from the Quran in everyday life and in his character, in everything he did and said. So the first thing we learn, the most important thing we learn, is that human beings are meant to be taking responsibility. That's something which a lot of people are not doing, taking responsibility. So in the Quran, Surah 2, Ayah 30, it says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Prophet, when your Lord told the angels, I am putting a Khalifa on earth, they said, how can you put someone there who will cause damage and bloodshed when we celebrate your praises and proclaim your holiness? But he said, I know things you do not. And so what Khalifa means is a steward, but mostly it means the one who inherits from the previous generation. They will be given the rulership after the previous generation. They inherit the responsibility of the earth for that generation and of passing it on in a good state to the next generation. And they are standing in, and they are like an agent for God, or they've been entrusted by God with this responsibility, and they will be answerable and accountable to God for how they deal with that responsibility. So another surah, 67 ayahs 1 to 2, it says, "Exalted is he who holds all control in his hands, who has power over all things, who created death and life to test you people and reveal which of you does best. He is the mighty, the forgiving." So life is a test. Everything we're given that is within our power is a test for us. And we seem to be largely failing that test. But every little thing that we can do to make things better, Allah is recording it. And he knows all things and is aware of all things. So which principles should we be following according to Islam? One of the first ones, which is most relevant to consumption, is that we are supposed to keep balance and moderation. So in the Surah 59, ayahs 1 to 3, it says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, "He has raised up the sky, he has set the balance, so that you may not exceed in the balance. Weigh with justice and do not fall short in the balance. He has set down the earth for his creatures, with its fruits, its palm trees, with cheese clusters. Which then of your Lord's blessings do you both humans and jinns deny?" And so this makes it clear that we really are the main thing that human beings are expected to do is to establish justice and moderation and make sure that everyone gets their needs met. And this includes human rights and animal rights and economic justice. So in Islam, everybody is covered. All the rights are in balance. They're not favoring men over women, they're not favoring women over men, they're not favoring children over parents. It's all in balance. And other ways you can interpret the balance, there's actually another ayah in the Quran. It talks about you will not be able to transgress the balance. It would just be impossible for you. So Allah has set up the balance, and you may not transgress that balance. So that is because everything that we do that is to excess, it will fire back on us. We will not actually be able to live like that. We will suffer. So balance includes putting nutrients back in the soil, not taking too much, letting the animals have their provision, not trying to stop them eating everything, letting them have a little bit from the tops of the trees, perhaps, if we're harvesting fruit. And any other kind of excess is against Islam. So there's another surah about this, another ayah about this. It says, "Do not be wasteful." It's about not being wasteful. This is Surah 6, ayah 141. "It is he who produced both trellised and untrellised gardens, date palms, crops of diverse flavors, the olive, the pomegranate, alike and yet different. So when they bear fruit, eat some of it, paying what is due on the day of harvest, but do not be wasteful. God does not like wasteful people." So this is something which everyone should bear in mind when they are thinking about even their everyday life. And it has to be applied on many different scales. So we do waste, and that's what's causing most of the pollution. We don't think about how our waste products could be reused, or maybe somebody else would find them useful. Not enough. I mean, obviously there is recycling going on in many places, but it's not much going on in the Muslim world, I must say, that they don't have the infrastructure to change materials into something else, not in many of those countries. So, and also it's the amount of population growth and development that is not met. It's not kept up with proper rubbish collections, and it's hard to even just collect all the rubbish. And one of the problems is that even the rubbish is blowing everywhere, and it's very hard to clear up because it's not collected properly, consistently, So obviously we waste through excess clothes, products, gadgets. We waste energy. We waste a lot of time on entertainment and chatting, scrolling through social media. A lot of different kinds of waste you can think about. And currently, I feel like even human life is being wasted in Gaza. The human life is not being wasted, not being valued, and people are being wasted. So we need to get organized and disciplined, as Dr. Salah tells us. And that's one of the things I will talk a bit more later. Okay. So another aspect of looking after nature is that we should not change the pattern of nature, especially human nature. So in Surah 30, Ayah 30, it says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, so Prophet, as a man of pure faith, stand firm and true in your devotion to the religion. This is the natural disposition God instilled in mankind, or human beings. There is no altering God's creation, and this is the right religion, though most people do not realize it. So again, God is saying there is no altering God's creation. So you can try, but it cannot really be changed. You can try and genetically modify organisms. You can try and change from a man to a woman, or a woman to a man, but it is not actually going to be possible, and you're not going to have a good result from these things. But mainly it is talking about human nature and corruption of the human conscience and the soul. And human beings, they still have the conscience. Even
Luzita, I'm conscious a bit about the time.
yeah, okay, all right.
Really lovely, but it might be good to move on to the
Yeah, okay, I'm going down a bit now.
please.
All right, I'll try and move on to where you can do the Q&A, okay? Right, just again, I'll just quickly mention how we have to stand up for justice, and it's the most important principle in Islam, is honesty, truth, and justice. In Surah 4, Ayah 135, O believers, stand firm for justice as witnesses for Allah, even if it is against yourselves, your parents, or close relatives, be they rich or poor. Allah is best to ensure their interests. So do not let your desires cause you to deviate from justice. If you distort the testimony or refuse to give it, then know that Allah is certainly all aware of what you do. This is very topical right now. Justice is seemingly very hard to find in this world at the moment due to very powerful forces. And this translates in everyday life to good neighborliness, as Dr. Salah mentioned. And there's hadith about this, or many hadiths about this, but I will mention two quickly. Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him observed, by him in whose hand is my life, no bondsman truly believes till he likes for his neighbor what he likes for himself. And Abu Hurairah reported that the Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him said, a person whose neighbors are not safe from his evil will not enter the garden. So if you believe in Islam, you should take that very seriously. It is if your neighbor complains about you on the Day of Judgment, you will be in trouble. So what is it to be a good neighbor? It's just about kindness and consideration, avoiding any harm to them from dust, noise, rubbish, bad manners, obstacles, weeds in your garden, transferring to their garden, stress. And you should be concerned about their state and empathize with them, whether they are happy or sad. And you should be always thinking about them when you are doing your activities in your home and your garden. And Abu Hurairah reported that Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, peace and blessings be upon him, the rights of everyone will be restored on the day of resurrection until justice is fulfilled, even between the hornless sheep and the horned sheep. So even animals will get their justice on the Day of Judgment. And we are told in Islam to be kind and compassionate and considerate to animals for their physical and emotional needs, not just the physical needs. And so if we are using them for food or transport, or whatever other ways we keep animals as pets, for instance, we have to do it with gratefulness, respect, and care towards them, because they are all conscious of God and they praise God. They are all in communities like ours, according to the Quran. They should all be treated well and not abused and not deprived of what they need if they are completely dependent on us and under our care. So one Islamic Sharia principle is that for new technologies, for instance, we should the merit in using a certain thing lies in the proportion of benefit in relation to the harm, which is a very good overall principle, but it also includes physical, mental, emotional, spiritual benefits, which Islam covers very well. Okay, I've got to wrap up. Yeah, so no room in Islam for it doesn't matter, I can't be bothered, it's boring, I don't care. You know, these things are not Islamic. We need to increase our taqwa, our iman, practice what we preach, be good examples, and we need to repent and turn back to God, encourage good and forbid evil. It says, you are the best of peoples, evolved from mankind, encouraging what is right and forbidding what is wrong. And we need to cooperate in good works, as in the Hilf al-Fadul, with people, anybody who will do good works, environmental work, for instance, or justice, standing up for justice. We need to seek useful knowledge and be optimistic, and we'll find the good things, said Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him. And the best of you is the one who is most beneficial to others and kindest to their wives and families. And charity begins at home, as they say. Fight evil with what is better. And Islamic principle is safeguard and defend the honor, property, lives, intellect, and religion of all people in an Islamic state. Which
Thank you very much, Luzita.
Yeah.
That's really lovely.
So that is giving you general principles, and then we can discuss, you know, what kind of different activism we can do, and I can tell you a bit more about. Can you show the green and
That would be, yes, it would be nice to have the last slide just to finish
that slide. This is showing that.
Note.
Yeah,
that's a question.
Yeah.
So thanks very much, Luzita. Let's just give your voice a bit of a rest, and I have a question which I'll ask Dr. Salah first, but if you have anything you want to add, because it touches on upon the issue of justice. So I'm reading this question. This is probably the only one that we'll take. What do you think about climate justice? Will the developed world consider the need of the underdeveloped to develop, and how to find a compensation for the poor communities whose livelihoods are relying on utilizing natural resources for their survival? So that reminds me, Dr. Salah, of something that I heard probably 25 years ago, where the reason why the Southern Sahara in Algeria was getting less and less, having less and less trees, was because the trees that had been planted decades ago, which had grown, were being cut down by the villagers who were living at the edges of the Sahara. And the reason why was not because they didn't care about the trees, it was because they had pipelines of gas lines by the villages going from the Sahara all the way to Europe, but they were not seeing a drop of gas to heat their homes and cook. Therefore, they were stuck, and they had no choice but to cut the trees that have been planted there to stop the desertification. So I thought that was a very sad situation as well, which those countries, those people are not always given the chance to be caring about the environment because of the situation they're put in. So what do you think about this? How can this happen when you to let an underdeveloped country develop fully and at the same time protect the environment?
Thank you. Look, I was listening to Sister. She made some very good points. I'd like to get to make a comment on this briefly, and then I answer you. About, yes, Islam is wonderful as far as the environment. I began with that. There is absolutely a wonderful wisdom in the Quran and in the Hadith, and not just in relation to the environment, but in relation to justice, wars, economy, science, and so on. It's that I don't dispute. In fact, I do admire. It's wonderful, the beauty of Islam is, so that I have no dispute with. I have my problem is with Muslim society of today, which is barely Islamic at all. It has nothing to do with all the people need simply basic, fundamental, simple behavior to be clean, quiet, creative, and not to waste, and so on. That's all. It's not rocket science. And I can tell you, as far as the principles of Islam, Westerners are far closer to them than we are. That is my opinion. I have lived in the West, and I have lived in the Muslim world, and I can tell you the British, the Swedes, and so on are closer to the Islamic values than Muslims, especially in relation to cleanliness, greenery, and all the rest, respect for water and respect for them. That's number one. Of course, there are exceptions. Number two, to reply to Sister Safiya, The problems, Sister Safiya, I do not owe. I am now 70, although maybe I don't look 70. I spent the last 40, 50 years studying the realities of economic growth, imperialism, history, and so on. Yes, there are problems with because of the fault of the West and the colonialism, but many of the problems, if not most of the problems we have today in the Muslim world, stem from us. And Allah will not change us, improve us, until we change ourselves. We cannot blame the others all the time. It is a mistake, whether for cutting trees or for not. I have lived through it, I have studied it, and I have come. We are not excusable. I see it every day all around me. It's little things that we need to change, whether in scientific research, the environment, good behavior, not wasting. It's not Westerners, Safiya, who are coming and forcing us to waste. The waste, you see, the trash, our own acts. It cannot improve until we change it ourselves. Muslims have to learn the basic fundamental rule, line in the Quran. Allah won't change a nation until they change themselves within. You cannot just blame the others. The Prophet, peace be upon him, spent years teaching the early Muslims and this and that and forming a new mind. This is how Muslims became conquerors and builders of civilization. They didn't go with their mess and their chaos to Indonesia. They went and they gave the good example. How do we do that? It's by giving the good example in everything, not being wasteful, being careful, being clean, and so on. This is, so the change. Cutting the trees, Safiya. I have seen it with my own eyes. People cut trees because simply they cut them because they want to build, because they want to have a garden, because they want to feed their cows, out of selfish reasons. In Africa, they cut the trees because people want them for wood first before somebody else cut them. Picking the fruit from trees. Sometimes they pick the fruit green. I see it around here when it comes to sweet chestnuts, because they want to pick them before somebody else picks them. It is grabbing, plundering. It has nothing to do with Westerners. We have 90%, I can tell you, 90%, while we are not inventive, why we are not creative, why we are destructive, why our societies are difficult to live, why we have corruption, is because of us. It has nothing. We cannot just blame the Westerners all the time. They are
This is very interesting. Thank you. Because in the chat, when you were talking, there was some conversation about this, whether it was big companies that were, polluting the rivers. And yes, they do to a certain extent, even here in the UK. Believe it or not, they still do it. But at the same time, I think your point is very important, that we, and that was also visible in the chat, that people all realize that, yes, it is a responsibility we have to take upon ourselves on an individual basis.
Absolutely.
And this is something that is now has been drummed up a lot in our Western societies through school. And someone was asking whether either of you knew of a project in school in any of the Muslim countries where they start educating the youth, because that's where it starts, doesn't it?
Definitely there is.
If you have anything.
Yeah, in Indonesia they have green boarding schools and in Kenya I've seen some green boarding schools, and a lot of permaculture being done on schools in Kenya, teaching them how to grow vegetables, teaching them about looking after the environment. In Tanzania, I think they were having Zanzibar. The IFEES helped to draw up guidelines for teachers in how to teach about Islamic principles of the environment and managing the environment. So there's these are some examples of what can be done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Luzita, it begins at home. The parents.
Yes.
The parents. Look,
I think Dr. Salah, what you'll find. And
look, sorry, Sister Safiya, I need to make this point. The parents need to give the good example in honesty, in respect for the neighbors, in caring for the environment, in reading books. Bring me Muslim parents who make sure that their children respect their neighbors or read books or care for them. It's maybe 0.00, not to be dirty, to be quiet, to go to. This, the problem begins at home with us. At home already, the children learn how to just think of how to make money, how to take this, how to be loud, how to be. It begins at home. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Thank you very much.
Allah,
you're right. It is an excellent reminder
look,
to
Safiya,
finish.
Allah has gifted us with one thing which we mustn't fail to understand completely: the family. We still have the institution of the family, and it should play the fundamental role. At least we are not like Western society that has lost this crucial institution, plus the institution of the mosque. This plus the school. The education begins here. If the parents are dishonest, care only for money, are loud, play their TV loud until whatever, drink, messy, chaotic, what do you expect of the children? And this is where it begins. We should praise Allah that we have the institution, such as the family. Alhamdulillah, Allah is still being kind to us. He's saving us by keeping us that's centrally. The day we lose the institution of the family, then we are finished. Then we become, then you can't say, you can't blame anybody. And now the family should play the central role. We should, they should, especially now that we have many people educated, to be honest, not to focus on money, consumption, trivia, crap. Come and watch TV here. It's crap from morning until. It's not the Westerners who are inflicting us the crap on our TV sets.
Very true.
If you watch the television here in this country where I am now, 1 hour will corrupt millions of. I have never seen filth I see on TV here than I seen in England.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Salah. This is
we cannot just blame the
essential point.
Yeah, it's very true.
Very true. And to wrap up, as you can see, this is just such a broad subject. We could go on for hours and hours. I'm sure many of you
we begin with ourselves. Can I just talk about the organizations that are there that people can join to learn more about to be involved in this environmental activism in the UK especially? And there are websites that you can go and look at, and there are lots of resources to learn about it. Can I mention those?
Yeah, go quickly. Yeah.
Okay, so in the UK, the main authority on Islam and the environment is IFEES, Islamic Foundation for Ecology and Environmental Sciences, IFEES EcoIslam, at www.ifees.org.uk. And also there's now the Al-Mizan Covenant, which covers the Islamic principles in detail. And that's something that has been ratified or agreed upon by many Islamic scholars and organizations.
That's great. We have to stop here, Luzita. We have to stop
Climate Declaration, and also, Exile Muslims, the Wisdom in Nature, UK, Green Muslims in the US.
As you know, Luzita, people will be
all those things. Many different people. Permaculture done by Muslims in France and in Tunisia and all over the world.
We have to stop. I'm very sorry. I hate interrupting this amazing conversation, but we really do have. We had such a wonderful conversation, and all of these people basically educate yourself, go back home, go back to travel around the world and educate people who you see when you go and travel into the Muslim countries. And the children, I'm convinced the children will go to their parents and say, enough is enough. Let's stop this and let's change things. And hopefully schools will have a big role to play. Thank you so much, Dr. Salah. Thank you so much, Luzita, for
You're very welcome. Just to work at every level, not just home and mosque level. We can work at many different levels of society in whatever capacity we are able to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Safiya.
Okay, thank you very much. Jazakallah khairan to everybody.
So we're gonna finish in a minute. Thank you so much for this fascinating conversation. I'm sure we would love to continue that next year, perhaps focus on one particular aspect. And before we go, I just wanted to mention that we've got 2 live events coming up in Manchester. We've got our migrant stories with Manchester Histories Festival in the Student Union of Manchester University. It's a partnership between MACFEST and Manchester Histories Festival, but also it's part of the 200 years celebrations of Manchester University. So it's a very, very special event. And it's more than just the migrant stories. It's actually a day of events. So please take a look on Eventbrite or the University of Manchester or Manchester History's website. We also have musical evening at the Lowry on Saturday, 22nd of June. Right, the migrant stories is on Sunday, 9th of June. And we've got also on Saturday, 15th of June, books with Safiya from the USA. And on Sunday, 16th of June, we've got an event scheduled, Indonesian Culture and Heritage, absolutely fascinating. However, if we do have Eid starting on that day, we're going to postpone that event and we'll let you know when it's going to happen. So that was all from me. Please remember to submit your artworks to our Arts Awards before 30th of June. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you again next year on another environmental event. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Assalamu
It's been
alaikum,
amazing.
rahmatullahi wa
Love the
barakatuh to everybody.
conversation. Thank you so much, and enjoy your weekend. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Katarzyna.
Thank you.
Bye bye for now. Assalamu
Bye-bye.
alaikum wa rahmatullahi
Assalamu
wa
alaikum wa
barakatuh.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.